Ukraine may join the European Union in the coming months, but under a hybrid model that provides for mutual defense among European countries. However, Kyiv will not receive full voting rights in the European Union. In particular, Germany and France have proposed so-called simplified membership for Ukraine in the European Union and the granting of symbolic benefits. As Friedrich Merz and Emmanuel Macron say, Kyiv will not have voting rights, but the format may include a provision on mutual defense. On the one hand, for Ukraine, this is a direct path to full membership in the future. And for Europe, it is real protection provided by Ukraine's armed forces, since European armies are objectively not ready for a major war. I'm Alexei Pechi. Let's discuss this topic together, but please subscribe first. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, write any comment under this episode, and subscribe to my Telegram channel Pechi News. The link to it is in the description of this video. There you will also find links on how you can support the work of this YouTube channel. I will be grateful for any of your donations or sponsorships. So, after Volodymyr Zelensky's high-profile European tour, Germany and France called to grant Ukraine symbolic benefits at the stage of preparation for accession, excluding agricultural subsidies, the EU and voting rights. This does not meet Kyiv's hopes for accelerated membership after a potential peace agreement with Russia. This is reported today by the Financial Times. But this does not mean that Kyiv is getting simplified or hybrid membership in the European Union. But what does all this mean then? Let's figure it out now. President Volodymyr Zelensky considers membership in the European Union one of the key advantages for anyone. In this, he advocates for Ukraine's accession to the European Union as early as 2027. However, the largest members of the European Union oppose the European Commission's proposals to break the slow and bureaucratic accession process in order to provide Kyiv with quick benefits. Let me explain. Earlier, some European Union countries, and primarily the European Commission, called for granting Ukraine such a simplified and accelerated process. But not everyone was pleased with this proposal. First and foremost, France and Germany opposed it and proposed their own alternative. And now the proposals from Germany and France, outlined in separate documents reviewed by the Financial Times, dispel any hopes Kyiv had that the war-torn country could be granted privileged status when applying to join the bloc. In particular, Germany is seeking an associate member status, under which Kyiv would participate in meetings of ministers and leaders, but would not have voting rights and would not have an automatic right to receive funds from the European Union's common budget. It's like being in the European Union but without voting rights. France calls this kind of intermediate membership the status of an integrated state, under which access to the common agricultural policy and European funding is deferred. Something like the cohesion policy should be postponed until after joining the EU. And here the unpleasant truth comes to light. The recent electoral defeat of Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who had vetoed the start of Ukraine's membership talks, has given some hope for progress. So now there are no obstacles, Orban is gone. So that's it, let's start negotiations and admit Ukraine to the European Union. However, the vast majority of EU members have serious concerns that granting Ukraine and other candidates accelerated accession to the European Union will undermine the bloc's political dynamics and devalue membership. In short, Viktor Orban was simply the one who publicly opposed Ukraine's accession to the EU, but there were also those who did it secretly. Well, they hid behind the argument that, listen, EU membership is something very significant, so you can't just give it away like that. Countries like Ukraine need to be put through some hardship for several years so that they appreciate the value of what they get when they eventually join the EU. And now, according to Ukrainian officials, Kyiv fears that any softened concept of membership will be seen by the Ukrainian people as a poor substitute for real membership, although some elements proposed by Merz and Macron could be useful. The Franco-German proposals emerged after the almost universal rejection of the so-called reverse enlargement concept proposed by the Commission, which would grant Ukraine full membership without meeting all EU criteria, and then gradually receiving financial and other benefits as these benchmarks are achieved in various policy areas. The main difference between the idea of the European Commission and the concepts of Paris and Berlin is when Ukraine will be able to appoint members of the European Union and gain voting rights in the bloc's decision-making councils. Germany's proposal states that the new status will have symbolic power due to its name and can be granted by a political decision of EU leaders, allowing lengthy procedures to be bypassed. And here's an interesting point. A softer version of membership would include the EU's Mutual Defense Clause, which is seen as one of the key advantages for Ukraine, considering that NATO membership is ruled out for the foreseeable future. Such a clause could actually be implemented through a simple political declaration. However, there will be no automatic use of European Union budget funds. Instead, Ukraine will gradually be connected to EU funding programs in accordance with the progress of negotiations and transitional rules. That is, the point is that at first Ukraine is accepted in this kind of hybrid way. The European Union recognizes Ukraine as an EU member, but does not grant it voting rights or access to the European Union budget. But as Ukraine fulfills the requirements and reforms, it will eventually receive such rights. Right now, the proposal is that Ukraine should first fulfill all the conditions, all the reforms, all the clusters, and so on. And only then will the negotiations about joining begin. So, you see, this reverse process means that first they accept, because Ukraine has already carried out enough reforms, they accept, but then, in order to get all the perks, all the bonuses of EU membership, a lot more reforms need to be carried out. It's important to note that both countries, Germany and France, emphasize that this simplified version is not an alternative to full membership, but, according to Berlin, is a substantial path to membership that is easy to implement, which will serve as an accelerator on this path. Paris has already stated this. But here's the question of mutual defense. The question clearly has an implicit subtext because, in addition to Europe helping Ukraine, it also means the reverse process. It's about the Ukrainian armed forces helping Europe. And this is something to think about. And why Paris and Berlin are so actively promoting exactly this concept of Ukraine joining the European Union. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. And don't forget to give it a like. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so with any donation or a paid membership. How to do this? All the links and details are in the description for this video. It clearly says there, support Alexei Peachy's channel. Choose any format that's convenient for you. I'll be grateful for any support you give. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.